terms of the social interests expressed through the political system, you see clearly great power of the financial elites. Clearly that is demonstrated in country after country. You look at a place like Greece, which has been devastated. The sector that has had its interests protected throughout are the banks. Whatever else might have happened to the country, the banks must be protected. And they were protected, right, in a variety of ways. So clearly the social interest that has managed to project its well-being best, right, in the political system is the financial interest. But the question you're asking me is about politics and what has that meant for politics and for political ideology? Well, to me, the most important change and transformation of the last 2 decades as financialization went into overdrive is the collapse of all social democracy. The social democrats, I know in this country social democracy hasn't had the same history for reasons of how US capitalism.
Well, sort of the New Deal.
Sort of, it's the closest.
Sort of
yeah.
The American version of it is the New Deal.
It's the closest you get to it, but obviously in Europe and elsewhere has that's collapsed. And the reason it's collapsed is because it basically accepted lock, stock, and barrel the arguments of neoliberalism, the idea of the market, the idea of financial growth and financial expansion. He really believed in it. And the ones who argue most forcefully still for that are actually social democrats. It's incredible. And therefore, their influence, certainly in Europe, is just vanishing. The Social Democratic Party in Greece has disappeared. The Social Democratic Party in Spain is disappearing nearly as fast. Social Democrats in Portugal are nowhere to be seen. In country after country, in Germany, the social democracy is hobbled because of that, because they've accepted these ideologies. They've got nothing to propose, which would be the equivalent of what they used to propose back in the 50s and the 60s and the 70s, which was some kind of regulated capitalism within those confines mentioned before. Some kind of, let's manage it. The scope for that has become much less. In this context, there is room for the left, as in the non-social democratic left. The tragedy there is that the left in Europe and elsewhere has been incredibly weak because of the events of the last 2 to 3 decades, the collapse of the Soviet Union, the massive defeats of the 80s in terms of class struggle and so on. And the left hasn't been able to take up the mantle, not yet. There is life. It's not a corpse yet. There is life. Things are happening, particularly because of the crisis. It took time for the left to comprehend what happened in the crisis, and they're beginning to respond. Who will fill the space left by the collapse of social democracy, by the ideological bankruptcy of social democracy, is the most interesting question for politics today. Who will fill that space? How will it be filled? It remains to be seen. Now, when you look at the rest of the political spectrum, and again in Europe, you see very important things happening there too. The financial crisis has been resolved in the interests of the financial elite, clearly, and the cost has been passed on to working people and often on to the poorest, clearly. And this naked demonstration of class interest and class privilege has actually begun to bring changes on the right too. The parties of the right are changing. We see a hardening, the emergence of the extreme right in a big way, reflecting social frustration as well and giving it that kind of very conservative, very backward outlook, but also the emergence of an authoritarian streak within the rest of the right. Times are dangerous. The more class-based this society becomes and the more unstable it becomes, the harder the options. We know that from history. That's why it's unstable, as I said before. That's why things are going to happen, and they're going to happen sooner rather than later.
Should we take a break? Kind of go casual. There's wine and beer for sale out here. And there's a donation tray. Thanks, everybody. How about T-shirts, hoodies? And but we're going to hang around. We can talk some more, but I'll do a closing so we have it for the edit, for the fun. You got me on a single? Give me a yes. You got me? Okay. Tell me when you got me. Okay, everyone settle for a sec. That's not settling. So what I'm supposed to end this now. We're going to edit this, obviously. So that concludes our first town hall at the Real News Media Center. Thanks for joining us, and join us in the future next week. Oh, I don't know if this is going to be edited in time. All right, I won't promo the next one. We have one next Friday I'll tell you about in a second. Thanks for joining us on the Real News Network, the first town hall from the Real News Media Center in Baltimore. Please join us for the next time. Okay, just quickly, Friday, you don't shoot at this. This coming Friday is a screening of the film Shadows of Liberty. It's a documentary about how commercial news has closed down some very important lines of investigative journalism, and generally what's wrong with mainstream news. But a couple of the more interesting stories are Roberta Baskin was doing a story on Nike sweatshops, and for ABC, I believe, 2020, and they were scheduled to show it. And then they made a deal where Nike was going to, ABC, I guess it was ABC, they were going to be the Olympics that year. And Nike was the main Olympic sponsor, so they pulled her report from 2020. And then they wanted to edit it and water it down. And then they wanted all the journalists to wear jackets with Nike logos on, not just the sports journalists, everybody during the Olympics. So she quit in a big public thing. And then another story in the film is the story of the aircraft that went down off the coast of New Jersey. A couple hundred people were killed. And the FAA said it was a mechanical explosion, caused explosion, but there was a lot of suspicion that it was actually shot down by the Navy during naval exercises. And Christina Jorgensen was working for CBS News investigating that, and the Navy met with the heads of CBS News, and then she was told to stop investigating, and she refused, and she was fired. Both Roberta Baskin and Christina Jorgensen are going to be here to talk about their experiences. Glenn Ford from Black Agenda Report's going to be here to talk about the media and how it covers urban America. And I think we're saying the doors open at 6:30. We're going to start at 7. Or maybe I'm wrong. Is it 7:30 for that?
No, it's out front. There's a flyer.
Yeah, there's a flyer. Actually, I think the screening starts at 7:30. It's about an hour film, and then the panel will follow it. Anyway, thanks everybody, but hang around if you want to talk some more.
Come at 6:30, drink the wine.
What's that?
Screening at 7:30.
What's that?
I said doors open 6:30, drink the wine, go for the screening at 7:30.
Yeah, I think that's the scheme, yeah.
Can we announce the Democracy Conference?
Yeah, please do. Yeah, sure. Yeah.
16th and 17th here in Baltimore, we're having an economic democracy conference, and you can go to itsourEconomy.us to register for that.
First night is here.
The second day is all-day conferences at the School of Social Work, and there are 5 tracks, and I won't go into too much.
Anybody want to announce something?
Go to itsourEconomy.us.
It's our economy.
ItsourEconomy.us. It's us.
All right. Thank you, everybody. Thank you. Yeah. We can see it's good. It was good, and you can see how we have to move this with like.
Sure. I mean, I think for the first
So sad we're going to be
for the
away
first
next
stab,
week,
it did
so we're
went
gonna
quite good.
Oh, yeah.
So yeah, I think it probably opens up. Yeah, it's just
I just wanted to where you got to hold it.
Behind you.